Check out today's piece of fan art. It's the effeminate yet fiercely determined knight, Bedivere. This is really solid work, and I especially love the shading on the armor. Thank you so much, Ungaikyo04. The Sengoku Jidai, or Warring States period, is a time where Japan is divided by many samurai clans that fight one another to unite the country under a single warlord. Among these groups is the Nagao clan, and in the year 1530, the acclaimed warrior Nagao Tamekage fathers a child he names Kagetora. Of Tamekage's children, she is the youngest of at least 3 older siblings. Naturally, as the child of a samurai, Nagao Kagetora is raised with martial arts training. But even before the age of 7, her family notices that she has unique and terrifying traits. Her eyes are like that of a beast, and as if to match them, she possesses tremendous strength. Worst of all is her apathy. She laughs as she spars with and dominates her older brothers, stirring within them fear and hatred. Even her own father cannot stand to look at her, seeing a fierce monster in place of what should be an innocent child. He is disgusted by how she can remain smiling even after he angrily smacks her across the face. And yet, she is a child, naive to what it is others fear about her. She lacks weakness, and can't help but laugh in the face of what would frighten others. This is a problem stemming not from her lack of effort, but from her very nature. Her older sister, Aya, understands Kagetora's predicament and aims to remedy this inhumanity by having her study the 5 cardinal virtues of Buddhism. Aya hopes to instill upon Kagetora a sense of faith and discipline that will allow her to live among her fellow humans. By her father's orders, Kagetora is sent to live at a temple, isolated from others, where she resumes her training. The Nagao clan lives in Japan's Echigo province, serving as a branch of the Uesugi clan. While Kagetora's father Tamekage earns fame for his military achievements, this fortune betrays him during a campaign to Echu, where he is slain, causing great unrest in Echigo. In his absence, Tamekage's eldest sons feud among each other to succeed the clan, and ultimately, Nagao Harukage takes over the clan despite his poor health. By the time Kagetora turns 14, Harukage admits that he cannot properly stabilize Echigo. Of all candidates to succeed him, he reluctantly chooses Kagetora as the new head of the Nagao clan. Even after years training at the temple, while she has certainly become a talented warrior, he feels her demeanor hasn't changed at all from childhood. While she studied Buddhist virtues, he claims she is merely imitating the teachings and still cannot sympathize with others. He hands over the clan, but admits he fears her eyes more than any gods or Buddha. Again, Kagetora can only laugh. She still doesn't know what it's like to be weak, and her training for war only makes things worse. Of course, she desperately wants to understand, but simply cannot grasp emotions such as anger and sadness. Nevertheless, she develops a desire to protect people weaker than herself, believing it to be righteous and just. At the same time, she understands that protecting one person often means killing another, and so even this sentiment is clouded in terror. Her devotion to her clan is sincere, and yet her methods only make her appear as an inhuman killer, causing further misunderstanding. Regardless, her personal might is valuable, and she begins to lead the Nagao clan, still subservient to the larger Uesugi clan. By the age of 19, she has more than proven her skills as both a governor and tactician. One of the Uesugi clan's enemies is the Hojo clan, and their feud presents Kagetora with a golden opportunity. Her lord, Uesugi Norimasa, after being chased from his own estate by the enemy, comes to her castle for shelter. In exchange for her protection, Kagetora asks him to both adopt her and give her the title Lord of Echigo. A deal is made, and with the new name Uesugi Kenshin, Kagetora gains considerable political influence. She sets out to reclaim all of Echigo's former territory, but is halted when lords from Shinano request her aid in defeating a powerful warlord named Takeda Shingen. Because Shingen's recent conquests have nearly reached Echigo's borders, Kagetora accepts the task, diverting resources to fight both Shingen and the growing Hojo clan. Much of her career is based around fighting on these two fronts, strategically implementing aid and internal growth for the chance to battle them. Though it should not be ignored that, as formidable as she is in combat, Kagetora's military success is also attributed to her reform on trade, the market, and transportation. She establishes greater control over Echigo's commerce than its previous lords had, allowing her to better fund her armies. In addition to her soldiers, Kagetora also considers how to best improve her own fighting. While she finds firearms difficult to aim, she cannot decide whether or not to use a sword or spear on the battlefield. At this time, she encounters the inhuman figure of Bishamonten, a Buddhist deity wielding 8 swords. This encounter inspires her to take up both the sword and the spear. She also begins to proclaim herself as an avatar of Bishamonten, perhaps to justify her incredible strength. In accordance, she primarily takes up arms using 7 swords: Himezuru, Sanchomo, Tanikiri, Gokotai, Saiken, Shichise, and Taimatsu, alongside Biten, a long spear with 7-bladed tips. Altogether, these weapons are referred to as the 8th-fold blossom, and her use of them become known as Haka no Sonae, the flourishing 8 defenses. Thus, in addition to being competent in strategic and economic matters, she becomes feared as a war god in Echigo, riding atop her valiant steed Hosho Tsukige. Sadly, just as in her childhood, Kagetora experiences both reverence and fear from her retainers. The way she stands as more god than human makes her difficult to approach, and yet their response only further provokes her to embody the divine. As such, there are only occasional moments on the battlefield where she feels human at all anymore. This reputation sparks a famous anecdote in which she dodges the enemy's incoming bullets while calmly sipping wine. Despite this reverence, Kagetora seeks her own guidance from Bishamonten, wondering if her killings as a warrior are truly the right way to protect her people. She has learned to show basic emotions, but like before, it is a hollow gesture meant only to mask her intimidating eyes. With no counsel to turn to, she presses on down a path of warfare. Initially, Kagetora's battles against Takeda Shingen are played safe through undecided skirmishes, but in 1561, the two of them engage in their most famous confrontation, the 4th Battle of Kawanakajima. Here, Kagetora implements an iconic tactic whereby her front line swaps with soldiers in the rear, allowing exhausted troops the chance to regain their strength. By dividing her forces and having them take turns in their assault, Kagetora's army nearly defeats Shingen's. The two warlords duel in person, but Shingen defends himself with an iron fan until reinforcements drive them apart. Failure to slay Shingen grows into a larger issue when, 2 years later, he allies with the Hojo clan, uniting Kagetora's 2 principal enemies into a single force. Regardless, battles continue for nearly a decade until the United Front disbands. In a tasteless display, the Hojo clan cuts off Shingen's supply of salt, and to remedy the dilemma, Kagetora responds by sending him salt from her own province. While they are enemies, Kagetora wishes to fight a respectable battle. In the year 1569, Kagetora's Uesugi clan, the Takeda clan, and the Hojo clan are all enemies. Following an attack Shingen makes on the Hojo's Odawara castle, however, the 3 warring groups ultimately form an alliance. As part of the terms of their agreement, Hojo Ujiyasu's 7th son, Hojo Saburo, is adopted as Kagetora's child, as she lacks her own descendants. Ujiyasu himself dies just 3 years later, and after 2 more years, Takeda Shingen also meets his end, not in battle with Kagetora, but while trying to defend his forces from perhaps an even greater opponent, Oda Nobunaga. The loss of such a hero brings Kagetora to tears in one of the few moments that reveal her humanity. After over a decade on the battle's forefront, Kagetora has led her army in over 70 battles, never once suffering a personal defeat. She seeks to continue her expansion in an effort to hold her own against Nobunaga, the deadliest of her opponents. In 1577, she faces off against Nobunaga's forces in the Battle of Tedorigawa. While her troops are outnumbered by 20,000, Kagetora nonetheless claims victory with superior strategy, setting a trap that her enemy walks right into. Suffering too many casualties, the Nobunaga forces retreat, giving Kagetora a false sense of accomplishment. In truth, Nobunaga herself did not command her armies for that fight, and so Kagetora underestimates her true foe. Even worse, she overestimates herself. Years of fighting as a self-proclaimed god push her to try and overcome her own mortality. At the age of 48, she suffers from stomach aches, complaining of chest pain that feels like an iron ball wrenching within her. She realizes that she will not live another year, leaving behind a poem that reads, "Even a lifelong prosperity is but one cup of sake. A life of 49 years is passed in a dream. I know not what life is nor death. Year in, year out, all but a dream. Both heaven and hell are left behind. I stand in the moonlit dawn, free from clouds of attachment." Despite her impending death, Nagao Kagetora attempts to pave a future for the Uesugi clan, preparing a grand army to attack deeper into Nobunaga's land. Before this campaign takes off, she dies of what many come to believe is a cancer of her esophagus. Like her father before her, Kagetora's death causes unrest in Echigo, with infighting between her adopted sons. Their conflict leaves Echigo vulnerable to Oda Nobunaga's army, which nearly wipes out the Uesugi clan until Nobunaga's own death in 1582. Long after the Sengoku period comes to an end, legends persist about the chaotic battles that took place. In particular, Nagao Kagetora's rivalry with Takeda Shingen remains in the hearts and minds of historians and storytellers, earning Kagetora a seat in the Throne of Heroes as a Lancer-class servant. In the modern era, the Chaldea Security Organization, based in its new home Novum Chaldea, aims to protect proper human history from an alien god. Their efforts are aided by an Atlas alchemist named Sion Eltnem Sakaris, though her involvement also appears to bring issues. Logos React is one of the 7 superweapons of Atlas. It functions as a simulation device, creating various worlds within itself. Atlas can use the device to test various possibilities for human history by inputting certain criteria and having Logos React calculate the trajectory of that data. Sion has a copy of this device called Logos React Generic, a birthday gift given to her by her adopted father Zepia. This copy is flawed, however, as inconsistencies within its simulations can gather to create singularities that encroach upon reality. Due to its dangerous nature, Sion keeps it sealed away in the storeroom of Novum Chaldea, but this does nothing to halt its internal simulations. One such simulation calculates possibilities for the Sengoku era of Japan, analyzing the various ways in which the country could be unified through a Holy Grail war. The simulation becomes impossible to contain when, within, a man known as the High Priest of Makuzu prematurely obtains the Grail and uses it to summon Maxwell's Demon, a servant manifestation of a thought experiment that suggests a means of violating the second law of thermodynamics. As such, this servant, Maxwell, has a noble phantasm based on the experiment that functions as a perpetual generator for infinite mana. The High Priest aims to bring salvation to humanity, founding the Church of Makuzu with the intent to materialize the Buddhist paradise of Sukfati using the mana from Maxwell's noble phantasm. The infinite scope of this mana generator proves too much for Logos React Generic to handle, causing this simulation of the Sengoku Jidai to leak into reality as a singularity that envelops Chaldea's master Ritsuka and a handful of Japanese servants. There, Ritsuka finds that the era remains at war. Various factions, ruled by their own respective incarnations of Oda Nobunaga, fight to claim territory and unify the land. In an attempt to resolve this singularity, Ritsuka and their servants form their own faction, the Chaldea clan, and wage war against the other Nobus. In a similar situation, Nagao Kagetora finds herself trapped within the singularity and forms a contract with Ritsuka to help correct it. In battle, Nagao Kagetora fights with the same 7-tipped spear she wielded in life. The anecdote of her dodging bullets with ease manifests itself as a skill that prevents firearms from striking her. So long as she doesn't actually consider getting hit, reality warps to ensure her safety. Also manifesting from her legend is her noble phantasm, Bishamonten's 8 phases wheel charge formation. Her favored rotating battle formation takes the form of a technique she can perform in solo combat. When invoking this noble phantasm, Kagetora appears as 8 clones, each striking her enemy one after the other. While she is not a rider servant, her tie to Bishamonten gives her the authority to mount her beloved steed Hosho Tsukige, making her attacks even more devastating. With Kagetora's help, the Chaldea clan expands its domain, conquering the other Nobunagas until finally confronting the Church of Makuzu. To some, Makuzu's domain may truly appear as a paradise. The near-infinite supply from Maxwell's demon solves the people's need to work, and with the Nobus no longer at war, even Buddhist priests can lounge and feast upon meat without a care in the world. This lack of discipline, as well as Makuzu's lack of reverence to Buddha, irritate Kagetora. Even worse, this paradise is imperfect and comes at a steep cost. To keep the generator functioning, it requires monthly sacrifices of pure mana from captive children. To stop this abomination, which is now grown out of control, she plans to sacrifice herself, simply seeing it as the logical conclusion for the strong to be in service to the weak. But Ritsuka expresses wanting to save everyone, including her. Kagetora looks upon her master and sees perhaps one of the weakest people she's ever met. Ritsuka depends on the help of all of their talented servants, as well as Chaldea's support, having next to no fighting potential of their own. Despite this, she sees how Ritsuka fights against that weakness to achieve the unthinkable. By observing Ritsuka's stubborn naivete, Kagetora finally understands what makes someone human. Thanks to this epiphany, she is able to fight alongside the rest of Ritsuka's servants and defeat Maxwell's demon. Both Makuzu and the generator are deleted as errors, and the singularity is resolved. Having formed a profound bond with Ritsuka as a vassal, Kagetora declares that if Chaldea requires her aid once more, they need only to pray to Bishamonten. Sure enough, one of Japan's greatest generals is summoned by Chaldea, performing spectacularly well as a servant. With newfound understanding of humanity, Nagao Kagetora forwards the ambition she carried in life to protect the human order, this time alongside allies who aren't afraid of her nature.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and, most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of my anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content. If you want to support me directly, there are now 3 ways that all provide the same benefits. You can click Join here on YouTube, or join Patreon or Subscribestar for access to exclusive vids and early access. As always, celebrate your fandom.